Okay, well, you're welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed your coffee and had a nice chat and a nice break. So we're going to pick up now. We've been delighted that Lucile SEVER has now joined us. She was a little bit delayed this morning, but we are worth waiting for. So Lucile works with the European Biogas Association, where she's the policy officer in charge of following the circular economy dossiers. And she deals with legislation related to agriculture and environment and coordinates the EBA's, European Biogas Association's working group on circular bioeconomy. She's been with the EBA for about 2 years, and prior to that, Lucile worked for INRAE in France. So her presentation is the importance of animal manures for the biogas and biomethane industry. So over to you, Lucile.
Thank you, Frank. Can you hear me well? Yes, good. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Today, I will. Where should I?
Point it towards that.
There. Ooh. So today, I will talk about the importance of animal manure for biogases, but actually also about the importance of the biogases industry for manure, because it's definitely a win-win system there. So first, I will tell you a few words about the European Biogas Association. So the main aim of the association is to scale up the production and use of biogases in Europe. We represent around 8,000 stakeholders in Europe, and we have in our membership more than 300 companies. More than 300 members, including 250 companies, 51 national associations coming from 35 countries. So here you can see data from our latest statistical report that was published last year. As you can see, in 2022, we were producing around 21 billion cubic meters of biogases, including 16.8 BCM of biogas and 4.2 BCM of biomethane. So, as you might be aware of, biomethane is the same molecule that you have in natural gas, so that it's very interesting because you can directly inject it into the natural gas grid and use it for any natural gas end uses. And so 21 BCM, this represents a bit more than the gas demand of Poland, and it's equivalent to around 6% of the EU gas consumption. And in the last 4 years, the biomethane production itself doubled. But so what is interesting to see is also the potential for the future. So as you might know, there was this Repower EU plan that was published by the Commission in May 2022, following the war on Ukraine. And it tasked the sector with delivering 35 BCM of biomethane by 2030. So based on several studies that we made, we saw that we could even exceed this target, going towards 41 BCM of biomethane by 2030, 101 BCM by 2040, and even 151 BCM by 2050. And by 2040, biomethane production could supply 85% of gaseous fuels demand in Europe. But of course, for this, we need to stimulate all sustainable feedstocks, and this is obviously where manure becomes very important for the industry. So this is we saw a potential of 74 BCM per year of biomethane in Europe, based only on anaerobic digestion by 2040, and according to our study, 19% of this potential would come from animal manure, making it one of the 3 main feedstocks for biogases, for biomethane. But so today, I've heard that the topic is livestock is more than food, and for us, biogas systems are also more than just energy. So as you can see on the graph, we are not only producing biogas and biomethane, but we are also producing 2 additional co-products. So you have digestate that can be used as an organic fertilizer, and also biogenic CO2 that can be used for various industrial end uses. And well, if we focus a bit on digestate, it is a very valuable product. It contains a higher proportion of readily available nutrients and NPK than in the raw feedstock. It has also the same amount of stabilized organic matter, and that makes it a valuable organic fertilizer and soil improver. And so we did a calculation to see what amount of synthetic fertilizers could be displaced with digestate in Europe. And so we know that there were 31 million tons of digestate in dry matter that was produced in Europe in 2022. And based only on the nutrient content of this digestate, we know that it could have already displaced 15% of nitrogen-based fertilizers, 11% of phosphorus fertilizers, and 6% of potassium fertilizers. So the GHG emission reduction potential that is associated with the displacement of these synthetic N fertilizers with digestate amounts to 10 million tons of CO2 equivalent in 2022. And if we were to replace 15%, for instance, of synthetic N fertilizers with digestate, we could have already saved 2 BCM of natural gas in 2022. So very good potential, but what is interesting is also the carbon content of digestate and its effect in terms of carbon storage. So this digestate, the estimation of the digestate, it contained actually 8.3 million tons of total organic 9.3 million tons of total organic carbon in 2022. And after AD, this carbon is likely to be in a more stable form so that it's more recalcitrant to biodegradation. And this leads to a high potential for carbon storage and also to humus and structure formation in the soil. It increases the soil's fertility, functionality, microbial activity, aeration, and also water retention capacity. And here, if you look at the right-hand side, you can see the results from an article that was published last year, where they compared the carbon storage potential of several incubated soil cores amended with maestro, cattle manure, 2 types of digestate, and a solid fraction of digestate. And what they found out is that after 1 to 2 years, for instance, 86% of the total organic carbon was remaining in the solid fraction of digestate, compared to 43%, for instance, for maestro. So even if we need much more research on this field, this is already showing that the application of digestate and even more of the solid fraction of digestate has a good potential as a sustainable soil management and a carbon farming practice. So here you can see the priorities that we have for the new EU mandate. So of course the first one is that we really want to support the development of AD in rural areas. Firstly through funding by the Common Agricultural Policy. But I wanted to focus a bit more on the last priority. So we really want policymakers to acknowledge the role of AD in reducing GHG emissions in Europe. So I was not able to follow the other presentation, but I guess that it has been mentioned a lot of time that at the moment there is a lot of discussion on the future of the agriculture, on the issue of sustainability linked with agriculture and livestock farming, and we see more and more stakeholders that are advocating for a complete transformation of the livestock farming system, change of diets also, and we believe that it's more and more important, important to showcase that AD is a good solution to reduce GHG emission, and also a cost-effective one. So I wanted to show you this graph that is coming from a report from the Joint Research Center that was published last year. Or, no, not last year, sorry, 4 years ago. And so here they ranked the various policy options that are able to mitigate GHG emission in agriculture. And so the width of the bar shows you the total abatement potential in terms of GHG emission in million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions. And the height of the bar show you the cost abatement. So what is the cost in euros per type of mitigation option? So if you look at options that have a relatively low cost, so from here to here, let's say, under 60 euros per ton of CO2 equivalent, you will see that AD is the second most promising measure actually in terms of total emissions abatement. Sorry, I realize that you cannot read very well. So here, this is AD. You have the best solution is just in orange there. It's following histosols, but yeah, in terms of cost, AD remains a very interesting also option. But I invite you to have a look at this paper also. It's very interesting. And I think that's my last slide. Just wanted to show you this also. We are organizing webinar on the 4th of December to showcase the new statistical report that we are publishing. So you are welcome to join if you are interested to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucile. We have time for one question if there is a question. So up here at the front, Craig, just introduce yourself maybe for the people online.
Yep.
Your name.
So, Greg Lewis, I'm the chair of the steering committee for FAB. On your last slide about the mitigation, I find it quite interesting that breeding is not included as one of the partial solutions, especially when we consider the ongoing genetic improvement and then obviously the potential of new technologies in the breeding space. And it seems a bit of a glaring omission, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree. But actually, so this is one of the articles that was used also by the Commission to work on an ongoing study on reduction of emissions. And in that study, breeding is completely included, I believe. I don't know why it was not in this specific article, but it is in the more broader study, let's say.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucile. We will move on. Thank you. So our next presentation is coming in online. It's from Barbara AMON. Is Barbara with us? Yes, Barbara.
Yes,
great to see you there.
I'm with you and I can hear you well. I hope you can also hear me.
Yes, perfectly, Barbara.
Right.
So just before I hand over to you, I will briefly introduce you. Barbara is a senior scientist and board representative at the Leipzig Institute for Agricultural Engineering and Bioeconomy in Potsdam in Germany, and also has an appointment in the University of Zielona Góra in Poland. Barbara participates in many panels dealing with sustainable agriculture, including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, United Nations Environment Programme and the FAO LEAP Partnership. She's co-chair of the Agriculture and Nature Panel of the UNECE Task Force on Emissions Inventory and Projections and the expert panel on mitigation of agricultural nitrogen under the UNECE Task Force on Reactive Nitrogen. So she's a lot of wide experience in the whole area of sustainable livestock. Her presentation today is going to be in relation to the role of livestock in circular bioeconomy systems, which is based really on a recently published FAO report. So I'll hand over to you, Barbara.
Yeah, thanks, Frank, for the very kind introduction and also for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to participate online, which I appreciate a lot. I have the pleasure of introducing you a new guideline that we are currently writing at the FAO LEAP on the role of livestock in circular bioeconomy system. And after having heard these highly interesting presentations this morning and being happy to wear a merino wool jacket for my presentation, I think that guideline fits quite well to the context that we heard this morning. So little bit of a background. In January 23, the FAO LEAP partnership initiated a new technical advisory group on integrating circular bioeconomy approaches in the environmental assessment of the livestock supply chains. And the TAG will define methodologies and metrics to account for the circular bioeconomy approaches in the livestock sector and review the main emerging recovery options for livestock. Yeah.
Sorry, could I interrupt you? We cannot see your slides yet, so if you're sharing, they have not come across.
Yeah, I share them. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the definition or the aim of our exercise, what we are doing. And I will later work on that in more detail, but I think that is in quite a good connection of what we heard this morning, because we fully agree that livestock has other benefits than just producing food. But as we also heard this morning, the assessment of livestock production system mainly concentrates on greenhouse gas and sometimes also on nitrogen emissions and doesn't take into account all the other side effects or benefits. And in that LEAP guidelines, we want to take a first step to overcome these deficiencies. And I would like also to inform you that in parallel to our technical advisory group, we also have a technical advisory group working on ecosystem services assessment, and they are also producing guidelines that will be finalized at the beginning of next year. So I would like to have the next slide, please. I just briefly introduced the 3 TAG leaders. That's myself, Philippe, and Tim. And we have 30 members from 25 countries in our technical advisory group. And that is maybe also something that my presentation can contribute to your seminar today, that our view goes beyond Europe. And I think that can also add some relevant information. The next slide, please. Yeah, the circular bioeconomy guideline of the LEAP is embedded in a long history of various guidelines, and the contents of those guidelines also are included in the circular bioeconomy approach. So we had guidelines on methane emissions, on nutrient cycling, on water resource efficiency, on feeds. That can all be found on the LEAP partnership website. The next slide, please. Yeah, that is the slide that you can click several times until you find the last logo of the ATF. One more time. Yeah. So you know that we aim at having sustainable and future-proof livestock production. And here we need research at the process level of feeding and housing and manure management. We then in research proceeded to assessing whole livestock systems and integrating crop, forestry, and livestock system. And now you will recognize that drawing that we use quite often in our publications and presentations, the role of livestock in an overall sustainable system that was produced by the Animal Task Force in 2021. The next slide, please. Here we can go, you can click 3 times now, but we can go very quickly because we heard that already this morning, that we have a lot of other benefits of livestock production. And these benefits can only be exploited if we transform livestock production to become an integrated part of circular bioeconomy system. And why is this so important? I would like to give a brief example from what I learned last week in Uruguay when we have the Latin American conference of the FAO there. Can we have the next slide, please? We had a very good excursion to Uruguay farms, and I would like to briefly explain what they are doing there, and that is relevant to many Latin American countries. Uruguay is mostly covered by high nature value grassland, so grassland that has not a high productivity, but a high biodiversity, rare species of flora and fauna. And livestock, they have a very low livestock density of about 1 livestock unit per hectare, and they are perfectly adapted to that natural environment. And the Uruguayan researchers also had research done on what would happen to the high nature value grassland if they removed their livestock. And it is not like we would expect maybe a forest to grow there, as would be the case in Europe. No, the soil is too shallow, and we would have a desert in these areas rather than a forest. So it is very, very relevant to keep livestock on these areas to preserve the biodiversity and the high nature value grassland. And that is only part, of course, of the influence, because it's also rural employment, and they have feed exports to Asia. We heard also some very interesting talks from China, how relevant the feed import is for them. And what is the development at the moment there, specifically with regard to reduction of greenhouse gas emissions? They could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by improving their systems quite good. But now they are at a level, if they want to reduce further the greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of milk or meat produced, as the life cycle assessment approach tells us, they would have to intensify the system. That means they would have to sow other grass species into their high nature value grasslands, and they would have to start feeding concentrates to their animals. And I think that is a typical example that shows what kind of negative side effects we can get if we only use the greenhouse gas balances or the life cycle assessment to assess the impact of livestock production systems. And with this excursion, I would like to go back to the core topic of my presentation with the next slide. That brings us back to the guidance document that we are producing. Just to give you an information of what will be in the guidelines. We have a brief introduction on what is circular bioeconomy. Then we have a chapter on methodologies and their application. That is one of the most challenging chapters in these guidelines, because we are at the moment in a situation where we do not have the one gold standard of methodology to assess circularity in bioeconomy. But we did our best to show the current status of the state of the art that we have in that respect. In the second chapter, we work on sources of co-products for feed and other applications. So we have plant-based products, animal-based products, and also a chapter on manure management and post-consumer wastes. That is followed by a fourth chapter on policy and regulations, because as we also learned this morning, if we want to change the system, we also have to consider barriers, and one of the barriers can be safety and or legal conditions. And after an extensive reference chapter, we have several appendices on energy values of plant-based products, nutritional values of plant-based products, examples of regional plant-based products, and also an appendix on indigenous knowledge. We go to the next slide. That slide just gives you a very brief overview on the chapter of methodology where integrated circularity indicators. That means we want to assess the level of circularity, the level of recycling of nutrients and inputs in our systems, because we consider that as a very relevant indicator to assess the environmental performance and the environmental impact of livestock production systems. The next slide, please. We also in the methodology chapter have information on environmental footprints. We also heard about life cycle assessment this morning, the attributional and the consequential assessment. And in the end, we want to achieve a food systems modeling and circularity to assess the total food chain impact. The next slide, please. In the plant-based co-products, we work on residuals, for example, straw, fermentation co-products, industrial co-products, and food loss and processing. And in the middle of the slide, you see some of the barriers that we are working on, which is, for example, food safety with contaminants and hygienic aspects, physical characteristics, the nutritional value, and also the registration systems. The next slide, please, works on the animal-based co-products. That is also a subchapter in our guidance document with livestock processing, meat and bone meal, milk processing, hide and skin, and also egg processing. And again, some various food safety regulatory limitations. But you can see that many of the byproducts that we heard about this morning are included in these LEAP guidelines. The next slide, please. Of course, manure plays a very crucial role in the circular bioeconomy system, where we have a chapter on manure management, field application, nutrient recovery, and also energy. So all the aspects that we heard in detail about this morning, these are included in the circular bioeconomy guidelines. The next slide, please. Yeah, and the policies. We very often hear about circular economy, that is the blue circle on that slide. That is based on the production of products, services, limiting consumption of primary materials while limiting waste production, but it is not limited to biomass. And the bioeconomy is based on the use of biomass, but not systemically circular. So we want to have a circular bioeconomy where we have waste reduction, recycling of biomass, and various sectors included. The next slide, please. Yeah, oh, that is not the last version of my presentation because I did some changes this morning, but it doesn't matter so much. I think we can grab the most relevant part here, and we already heard that in the introduction that we need to prioritize the use of recycled biomass. That means food consumption is the most preferred, and disposal of, obviously in the blue rectangular, the less preferred. The utmost priority is on prevention, and the first priority is also food use for humans. So everything that we can directly feed to humans should, if possible, also be used as food for humans and not feed for animals. And the next slide. Yeah, what are the next steps? We have received on the guidelines the second round of review comments. So we have 2 very extensive rounds of reviews for the guidelines, and we are currently revising the guidelines following reviewer suggestions. For example, there were some some comments on the clarity of the methodology section, and some reviewers suggested we should integrate some concrete case study examples to make the guidelines more clearer for users. That is what we are currently doing, and we hope to have the guidelines finalized by the end of 24 and officially launched by the beginning of 25. And on the next slide, which is the last slide of my presentation, I'm happy to acknowledge all the contributors to these guidelines. And with that, I conclude, and I will be happy to discuss with you, answer questions, but I think we will also have the opportunity to discuss later on the podium. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. So, look, you will be joining us on the panel discussion in about 30 minutes. So, but if there's any burning question or any clarification question, we can take it now. That was a very good overview of a very important report. So, thank you for that, Barbara. So, there's no burning question. I'm going to move on if that's okay, because we are a little bit behind time. So,
yeah, fully okay.
Thank you for that, and we will be seeing you, coming back to you shortly. So we have two more presentations before we get to the panel discussion, and they are from two farmers. Our first is from Portugal, and we're delighted to be joined by Manuel CHAVEIRO SOARES, who obtained a degree in animal science at the University of Lisbon, and was professor of animal production at the Instituto Superior de Agronomia. But he's here today to talk about poultry production, and he's been a consultant in that area since 1982, and very large poultry breeder, consulted very large poultry breeding company since 1986. Also a fruit grower and a director of cooperative fruiters. So, Manuel, we're looking forward to your presentation today, which is on the DENAYER farm, an integrated agri-food and environmental system. I'm sure I didn't pronounce it right.
Good morning.
You will correct
Thank
that.
you for the invitation.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to present you a very simple example of circular economy in broiler production in Portugal. The next, please.
Big button. Sit on, yeah. Back to you. That one goes back. Yeah, you need to speak to the microphone.
Como? Okay, thank you very much. In Portugal, the poultry production is in the north of the country.
You need to speak to the microphone.
In Portugal, the poultry production. Como? Pois, tem razão. Isto é um indicador também? Não dá. The poultry production is in the north of the country, in general, where the farmers complete the vegetable production with animal production. It's very common to have a small poultry house with 3, 4, 5 thousands broilers in complement of the production of wine or cereals and so on. But in the south of the country, we find large property namely with forest. The cork, for instance, is the most important, the cork, olives and so on, and no poultry production is common in this region. That's the reason why we choose the south of Portugal, the Doeira farm, to produce poultry, broiler, in order for biosecurity reasons. These are the leaders of this family company that next year complete 150 years. And then they have in 1996, when they bought this farm. It's a large farm in order to obtain three main objectives: biosecurity, as I explained before, no poultry production in this region; circular economy, and this large space allowed to make broiler production more sustainable; and low carbon footprint, because as you see, all the main operations are in the farm. This is a photo of the farm with these circles where corn is produced at the moment, and with 9 broiler farms that are yellow. These yellow are broiler farms with 6 house each one. So also the feed mill is there. The slaughterhouse in a thread, the composting unity, and unity also for byproducts. And in blue you can see a dam that water is very important for the corn production. Here green is more clear. Blue is the water. Green is the corn production. Yellow is the different broiler farms with 6 poultry house each one. Green is the feed mill that use the corn and receive the soybean from our factory 150 kilometers at the north of this region. At red, we have, as I told before, the slaughterhouse, the byproducts unity, and the composting. So our main productions are corn, and this corn is enough to feed 15 million broilers per year. Here we have the dam and the broiler litter that we used in order to produce the corn. The soil is clay, very difficult. So the production before it was very small, about 7 tons per hectare. But the use of this organic fertilizer, the broiler litter, modified the characteristics of the clay and increased the capacity to receive the water, and in addition, it is a fertilizer that supply vegetable nutrients. And so, presently, the corn production achieved to about 16 tons per hectare, from 7 to 16 tons per hectare during several years. Now we find the compound feed, as I told you, receive the corn, and also not in this farm, but 150 kilometers in the north, we have another factory to produce the soybean meal. The compound feed is used to feed the broilers. The broilers have the slaughterhouse. The byproducts are used for pet food. Some compound feed, some litter is also composting, because we have close to the farm people engaged in vegetable production to export, and they are very careful with the sanitary conditions of this fertilizer. So we pellet it and supply them as a safe product for the customer that will eat these products, vegetable products. Namely, they are namely exported for England. In addition, we produced photovoltaic energy in this farm. In this case, it's not enough, but anyway, if we consider all our farms, the photovoltaic energy is enough to our production. It means we don't use fossil fuel for ours, for hatcheries of poultry, or for the poultry house and so on. We use fuel only for some cars. My car, for instance, is already electric car that we use the photovoltaic produced in our company. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Have we any questions or comments for Manuel? Okay, one here in the front. Just for the benefit of people online, you might introduce yourself.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the very nice presentation. Morten Hetta from Sweden. I was thinking a little bit about the crop production. Do you have any crops in between the production of corn, or is it just corn, or do you have a crop rotation with other kinds of crops?
Other crops?
Yes, if you have a crop rotation, or is it a monoculture of corn, or is it a crop rotation on the farm?
Is it corn every year, or do you
No.
grow different crops?
Sometimes we've had a rotation with wheat.
Okay, thank you.
We are adept of the new biotechnology, so we use corn BT. So in these conditions, we use no pesticides in this farm.
Okay, very good.
By curiosity, the genetic modified cultures in Europe are only corn in Portugal and corn in Spain, a total of about 100,000 hectares. But Europe don't accept more OGM cultures. Okay. When in the world, 200 million hectares are cultivated, okay, from the United States to China.
Okay, no, that's good. I just want one more question, if you don't mind, which unless anybody here, I wish to ask you. You have an integrated system. If you were just a poultry producer, what would be the disadvantage? Like what you and your neighbours were growing the corn. Like what do you see as the big advantage of an integrated system as opposed to specialized system?
No, we have not integrated. People integrated with us, no.
No, but you have the crop production and the animals on the one farm, in the one enterprise?
No. Everything, the advantage is for biosecurity.
Okay.
Biosecurity. That's the first reason why we bought this farm 20 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
Even in we have 1.5 for broiler breeders. And all the farms are controlled, about 40 farms, small farms, in different places for biosecurity reasons and controlled directly by us.
Okay, no, that's an excellent example of a good integrated system. So thank you, Manuel, for that. So our next speaker is Perttu SIRVIÖ from Finland, from the Lampela Dairy Farm. And Perttu owns the farm together with his wife, and they're also the main employees or workers on the farm. So the important themes for them are the future of Finnish agriculture, the local economy, the development of rural areas, and the role that agriculture has in society. And he will speak about these issues now, and he's also a trustee in MTK, which is the Union of Agricultural Producers and Forest Owners in Finland. So you're very welcome, Perttu.
Thank you so much for having me here, an invitation to talk you some little bit about keeping farms, how farms keep countryside alive. Okay. So we go on. Yeah. So. Yep. Yeah. It's not that easy. So you can see the blue dot there where the Finland stands. I'm sorry about the map, by the way, that we have people from UK, for example, and it doesn't. But the map is from European Union, so it's not a statement. So. The place where I come from, Iisalmi city, is the blue dot over there. And are we in north or not? It depends. From my point of view, we are not that north. Arctic Circle is about 350 kilometers from us to the north. And if you imagine the Arctic Circle going around the world, it splits Alaska, or the state of US. So if we were transferred to US, we would be somewhere in Alaska and not on the coast even. So is it not or not? I don't know. Livestock, it's all also history for us. And our farm history goes even further than these 250 years, but we can our bookkeeping goes to that point. And of course, as you scientists, we also stand at the shoulders of our forefathers. And the farming wisdom I put there, it doesn't mean that we do the same thing that they did, but I think that we have learned always from the past generations. And as my elder colleague said once to me, I was whining about something that he didn't complain. He said that, Perttu, do you know, you never graduate from the last grade of farming school. So that's the point. We have always something to learn. We made this generational transition 2009. We bought the farm from my parents. And at the time we bought the farm, my parents were 56 years old. And that time we had in Finland this system called, I don't know what's the exact word, but early retirement support system. And that was very crucial in our case, because we were just studying in university and almost ready with our studies. And if we had built our career somewhere else, 7 to 8 years, I don't know if we ever come back to Iisalmi and take the farm over. So I don't know, we heard this that our farmers in Europe are old, and we have to solve the problem somehow. So I think the system we had in Finland earlier, it worked very well. What about the future? My older daughter is studying at this moment agriculture. She's 19 years old. And we have to think about some investment to the future, because at this point our farm doesn't give livelihood to 2 generations. So what we do in future, I don't know. Maybe our daughter takes over and I do my work with this coat on, not the rubber boots. I don't know. We'll see. What I mean in overall concept is that it's not that it's the business side, it's also a way of life. But way of life doesn't give livelihood to anyone. So it's business. We have 90 cows, mostly Holstein. Yield is about 1,250 energy corrected milk per cow per year. And 180 hectares field. And there's something we do with our fields for. Some silage, cereals, pea and stuff like that. And also this biodiversity fields now, it's increasing in our farm. I put this picture and then I thought that, oh my God, what do you think about this? This cow, don't worry, she's sleeping. She's alive and well today. Her name is Rolex. We have a name for every cow. And I put there that the Finnish way is that we use as little antibiotics as possible, and only by veterinarian's prescription. And that's how would I say? That's very important to us in Finland. Less antibiotics means lower risk of antibiotic resistance. And that's the problem which is increasing in the world all the time. We have also maintained in Finland salmonella-free status in food production, and it's getting harder and harder all the time, but we're still there. Sweden is also there. At our farm, the cows can go out, also in winter, and they love it. The snow is very good for the hooves. It cleans them, and I don't know what are the systems that they work, but they like it. We are part of the voluntary regimes of our milk buyer, Value Group. They have many points. One of is that dehorning we do with seduction and painkillers, and many more. And the grazing has a major role in these voluntary regimes. Our cows doesn't get, they go out, but they don't eat that much there, so it's kind of, how I would say, walk in the park to them. As we go walk in the park, they go out. It's also a nutrient cycle and circular economy. And our main goal in this system is to keep soil healthy and productive. And how we get there is this I put there. We have slurry and pellet manure. Then we add some ammonium sulfate from local nickel mine to slurry. And by that we can reduce use of mineral fertilizers. We also use this zero fiber from pulp industry. It improves soil productivity and carbon sequestration. And we also hand over manure to the neighbors we have. How would I say? We use nitrogen. We buy something also chemical fertilizers, and our usage of them is about 60 kilos per hectare per year. So we are not organic farm, but we use quite many parts of organic farming at our farm. But if we were organic farm, we couldn't take this ammonium sulfate, for example. It's not allowed in organic farming in Finland. And the grass is the thing in Finland. Because we don't have maize or corn. We have some at our area, maybe 1 or 5 years it succeeds. So it's not that good idea. It can be costly. When it succeeds, it's very good. But for example, we don't have it at all. Our grass yield is approximately, of course, some variation between years. It's 9,000 to 10,000 kilos per dry matter per year per hectare. We use kind of mix of seeds, mainly Timothy, meadow fescue, tall fescue, English ryegrass, and at least 2 or 3 clovers. We keep the grass to 4 to 5 years, and of course the feeding is another topic. But why I like grass, it keeps the environment green. Landscape is green wherever you go at our area. And of course, it has effects on reducing greenhouse gas emission. As I have put there, we are soybean free. We don't use soybean at any matter, not even the young ones, not even the cows. Livestock is biodiversity. We have heard today many views about that. We use alfalfa. The black picture there is pasture. Our young ones are at pasture there, near the lake. And this cow here. The road we are next to is quite popular cycling road, and we thought that maybe we could do something to give some joy to the people, and we made this cow. She even has ear tags somewhere. And rocks, we have a lot of rocks. I don't know, there's people from many countries, but I don't know, do you have them? We do. It's local economy. Our annual turnover at our farm is 750,000 euros per year. And why is that important? Is that we are purchase from our collaborators. And if I draw a circle of 6 kilometers, our collaborators are there. We buy quite much. Contracting, some grain, hay, and stuff, peas. So our farm is quite, how would I say, big employment of this kind of things. We give a job to many people. And especially in region I come from, Pohjois-Savo region, 80% of farm's income comes from dairy and beef. 80%. So the dairy is very crucial for our area. And we have lots of technology industry also, but still the Valio dairy industry is the biggest export unit in Pohjois-Savo region. It's also theory and practice. And this is something Natural Research Institute of Finland, Luke, has made some researches, and we are being part of it. There are many of things. This is just some, but our farm has been part of these. Or then I've been in project steering group, sometimes also a chairman. So we do lots of cooperation in Finland with our research system institute. Farms and Luke is kind of combined. And as you saw the cow sleeping before, she was using peat as bedding material. And this is something we've been thinking also, this separate slurry as bedding material. And we were eager to hear the results from Luke's research about that. We'll see what happens in future. So, it's also policy. And I think this cap we have now is, part of it is good. I like the idea that we ensure the fair income level for farmers. As I mentioned earlier, keeping fields plant covered, it's very good. Biodiversity that grass brings, and food security. But, there's always but. From my point of view, times has changed, and I'd like to see the food more in the center. And also because I'm a farmer, I'd like to see that allocating subsidies more to active farmers. Also, peatlands, as you know, it's at some point of Europe, it's quite big. Also, payment schedule, I don't get it always. I do the work to this year, and I get rest of payments next year's June. But what do I say? This is something I could speak for you about a day, but as we run ahead, I'll keep it short. Cows or livestock has a significant role in this Finnish comprehensive security concept, and this concept is cooperation model of Finnish preparedness, where vital social functions are handled together by authorities, businesses, NGOs, and citizens. And is there a pointer here? Is there a pointer here? No? Okay. These gray ones are the main topics, and these blue ones are what the farming can provide. And as you saw the map, we have borderline with Russia, 1,300 kilometers. So that's the one reason we have thought about these issues a lot in Finland. We never drop the defense. And we have saying in Finland that borderline with habitants is a safe border. So keeping countryside alive is also a security aspect in Finland in many ways. But I think I stop now. I'm used my time. So thank you much. And this picture, I took it last week, this Northern Lights, and that was last January. I opened the outdoor and I was going to our barn. So thank you so much.
Thank you for another very interesting outline of a very different farming system than the one we saw from Portugal, but equally interesting. Any questions or comments for Perttu?
Well, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. Michele Nori from DG AGRI as well. And you mentioned, amongst very many other interesting things, biodiversity fields. Can you elaborate more on this, please?
Yes. I'm sorry, I don't know all the plants we have there, but it's part of this ecosystem system we have in CAP. There are many legumes, sunflowers and stuff. And I have one seed mix which have 19 different species in it. So we put them, and we have this 7 hectares of it, and they are just, how would I say, they have effects at many levels. They are, how would I say, some of them bring joy to the people, some are good to the soil and stuff. So is there something specific you want to know about this?
If they are of any use to you except from the eco scheme, I mean the money from the eco scheme, do you see any other value into that kind of practice?
Yeah. Of course, the money is important for us, a big issue, but there are this, as I mentioned, I also see this many other things that they can provide to our community. So I would use them. No, I would say I was saying that I would use them with any money, but because they are you from DG AGRI are here, so I won't say it. I want the money of it, but I would use them. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we will move to the panel discussion. So if I could ask Carlos to join me up here, but also we have another speaker. Actually, maybe just wait for a minute, Carlos. Just want to wait for 2 minutes. Stef DENAYER is joining us also from Biogas Europe for the panel discussion. Stef, and I think you have a few slides, Stef, don't you?
Yes, indeed.
Yes. So, Stef, please, yeah. Okay. Stef is an industrial engineer, and he works, as I said, in Biogas Europe here in Brussels, in Belgium. And that's a company, an organisation that provides pilot plant facilities for companies looking to work in the whole bio-based economy. So you're going to tell us a little bit about your organisation.
Yeah. So I'm a bit of an outsider, I think, here, industrial biotech. But yeah, I'm very pleased to also be linked to the agricultural world and what's happening there. Yeah, what are these people doing, in fact? Well, in fact, we are busy with what we call the defossilization. So we need to get rid of this petroleum, go to the bio-based economy, and how to do that? Well, we need a lot of innovations. We see them popping up all over Europe, and that's nice, but often they are still in the lab phase. So it works. Eureka, I found something, it works, I've made a product. But yeah, to get these innovations to the industrial scale, that is still, let's say, a challenge in Europe. And that's why we created these, what we call open access pilot and demo infrastructures. So they already have, as you see, all the equipment, the investments have been made in all the equipments that you need to make all these bio-based products. You also have, and that you clearly also see, all these people which have expertise on upscaling these bioprocesses. So that is a bit the activity. Biogas Europe pilot plant is one of the biggest worldwide. They are located in Ghent, in Belgium here, with 170 people in the meanwhile. But I'm also representing Pilots for You, which is the Europe-wide network of open access pilot and demo infrastructures. To give you an idea of the wide range of bio-based products developed at Biogas Europe pilot plant, I just highlight some of them, because I heard this morning talking about collagen, gelatin, chitosan, leather, and so on. Well, all these things are also in development in these bioprocess activities, as you see. So we are talking about the alternative proteins, so the plant-based, the insect-based, the cultivated meat, let's say the microbial proteins. So that is biomass fermentation or precision fermentation. You have specialty carbohydrates, human milk sugars, sweeteners. In the materials activity, you have spider silk, and which is a very strong textile fiber, vegan leather, but also, of course, the whole area of bioplastics, which is also ongoing. Colorants also used in a lot of food applications, which are not, of course, all bio-based, and that is also an activity. The functional ingredients in the detergents, the biosurfactants, so surfactants are also fossil-based mainly, and yeah, they can also be made from biomass as a starting point. You see there also the best biopesticides, so also the whole pesticide world is still fossil-based, and it can also be, let's say, made bio-based. And of course, then is the question, yeah, bio-based, what is it? We start from what? Well, we start from biomass, and the biomass comes from, yeah, it can come from forestry, but it can also come from, let's say, the agricultural, and mostly it will need to come from that area, of course. And there is a large opportunity, of course, but there are also developments, as we see in the carbon capture, because we don't want to talk about decarbonization because we need the carbon. We want to upcycle the carbon. So also the carbon capturing, you take the off gases, you turn them into something useful by fermentation, gas fermentation, for example, and you can also make fish feed in the aquaculture area. So yeah, if you would be interested to, let's say, divine what's happening in this wonderful world of the bioeconomy in Europe, well, I would invite you to come to Brussels, and that's here in Brussels, at Sheraton Airport Hotel. The 3rd of December, we will have 110 pitches of innovators coming from the whole of Europe to come to pitch their new technology. And it covers all this broad area of bioeconomy solutions. So that was my short intro. Thank you.
Take a seat. Take a seat.
Where should I sit?
Where's all beside Stef? Just in the middle. Okay, so now we move to discussion, and this is your opportunity to participate and to ask questions of Stef, of Carlos, Barbara, and indeed if you had any questions for any of the speakers during our session, most of them are still here, so I'm sure they'll be delighted to participate in the discussion as well. So look, please put your hands up if you have any questions or any comments. You know, we've heard a lot now this morning. We've heard some really good examples of where I suppose livestock contribute things beyond food. We've kind of heard a little bit on the policy landscape. We've heard a little bit about how we might evaluate livestock to better account for some of these non-food attributes of livestock systems. So I suppose now we want to try and put it all together. So look, I'm going to need your help with this. So please participate, and also the people that are online, if you can put your questions into the chat, we will deal with those. So we're going to start with online.
We can perhaps start with the online questions this time. Thank you, Frank. So I'm Ana Granados, ATF, and IFAF, and I'm checking the chat, the questions from the chat. There is a question for Barbara. What about the increased animal disease risk that might impact the livestock in circular bioeconomic systems?
Does the question intend to suggest that bioeconomy systems would increase the risk of animal diseases? Am I understanding that correctly?
No, I think that, I mean, it's a question in the chat, so
okay.
I would say that is more if it's taken into consideration, this risk, in addition to other ones.
Specifically, the FAO has initiated a One Health initiative, reform, very recently. And we are closely working together with that because we consider the One Health approach, combining the health of animals, humans, and the environment as a very essential input also to the circular bioeconomy approach.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. And could I come back to you as well while you have the floor there? You talked about indicators of circularity for manure use in your presentation. And I was just wondering, how could those or some of those be used both for better assessing livestock systems, or should they, again, should the circularity of manure be part of the assessment of a livestock system? And how could they be, and how also could those indicators be used for individual farmers to better manage their livestock systems?
Well, I would tend to think that making optimal use of manures as nutrients for crops would be a very essential part to improve the environmental impact of livestock production systems. And one of the major assets of the circularity approach is that we strive to reduce external inputs and make best use of the internal products that we have. That means if we can make best use of the nutrients in the manures and at least partly replace mineral fertilizer input, that would of course improve circularity as well as the environmental performance of the farms.
No, look, I agree with you on that. It should be taken into account, but you could see maybe the conundrum that one way to reduce the nitrogen surplus on a farm is to export your manures to another farm, but that is reducing your circularity. So how do we bring these different concepts together, I suppose, is what I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think first of all, if we really go back to your drawing from 2021, the role of livestock in sustainable systems, I would tend to think that we must integrate and also adapt the amount of livestock production to the specific region that we have. That means on the long term, we should aim at not having an overproduction of livestock or manure in certain areas and an underproduction in other areas. So I would tend to think that in the long term, we would have to strive at a balance here. That is the first answer I would like to give. And the second answer is maybe not as easy or as clear, because we have not agreed, or maybe we will never 100% agree to what is circularity. Do we have to have circularity at one single farm? I don't think so. In a region, that's much better. Where do we draw the boundaries for circularity? How large shall the regions be? Is maybe the country the boundary for the circularity, or Europe? So we do not have a final answer on that. But what I would think we can give as a certain answer is that we do not necessarily have to draw the boundary for circularity approaches around each single farm. I think collaborating within regions should be the minimum aim that we have.
Okay, thanks. That's good. So, Carlos, just maybe put it to you or ask you to comment first. We had in Frederick Jolly's paper, he showed that there's a clear antagonism, as he called it, between the ecosystem services provided by livestock systems and the greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of protein. So, in other words, as the ecosystem services improved, the greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of protein got worse, or that also increased. And I suppose very often, and there's a huge focus, rightly so, on greenhouse gas emissions and trying to reduce those, but that obviously puts the focus on ruminant systems in particular, but they are the ones that provide all these ecosystem services. So how do you think the policy system should try to take those different deliverables from systems into account, or how do we actually assess systems better on a holistic basis?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess this first presentation shows a statement that you for sure have seen in presentations that I have done or my colleagues have done in the last year, we're always saying that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, because there are virtuous practices that you can find in more extensive systems, in more intensive systems. So sometimes when you try to cover your net, you are uncovering your feet. So the policy has the challenge to indeed to cater for all these different peculiarities. And I would even say that one of the key elements that we will have to face in the coming years is also the way these emissions are being measured or estimated or calculated. This is something also crucial, because any discussion we're having when it comes to sustainability and greenhouse gas emissions, etc., from ruminants, notably, requires that we are all using the same language. And I'm afraid that very often we don't always do it, and that's why I believe one of the key or the main tasks that we will be working in the coming years in the Commission is precisely to try to build a harmonized way to estimate the greenhouse gas emissions, so that anything that is put by means of policy is based on a common language that we can all understand.
Okay, would anybody else like to pick up on that point? Because I thought it was one of the clearest demonstrations of the need for holistic assessments or beyond life cycle assessment when we look at the contribution or the cost of livestock systems. So okay, 2 hands up. Great. Front here, and just introduce yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, Craig Lewis, FAB. I think the point you're leading on is fundamental, because when I start thinking about how we're going to be moving from an European livestock perspective with these defining circularity, the thing that then comes into my mind is how does that work as a metric in the context of international trade? Whether we talk about close partners like the UK or Serbia, or further afield from Brazil or North America, from a trade perspective, how do we safeguard those European, shall we say, systems that are moving towards circularity, and then define those products that are coming in as part of the trade, so that way we're competing on an equal level with those products that are coming in as well? I don't have that clear how we protect the EU agriculture when we define the products produced here under these circumstances. Any comments?
Well, it's a complicated question, because if I just said that only having a harmonized system to be used at EU level so that we talk about the same, if translating that to third country, to other partners, would be prove even more complicated. So I think we have already enough work to solve our issues, and then when it comes to third countries, there are negotiations. There are in some now it's part of any new free trade agreement or trade agreements with third countries. There are sustainability chapters that are looked at. I'm not don't know the details on what's there, but definitely at least there's ambition to try to encourage our partners to go in the same direction. As I presented in my slide, we are the only region in the world decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. So I think there's quite a lot to ask to our partners, at least to try to move in the same direction.
Barbara, you'd like to comment on that? You're on mute, I think, Barbara.
Not directly on that, but on your previous question, how we consider the contrast between life cycle assessment and environmental services, so that might lead away from the current discussion now.
But please, give your comment.
I think it is an extremely relevant discussion, and that is why I also integrated the example from Uruguay into my presentation. Because not only should we maybe improve the circularity and environmental impact of our European systems, but I think we should also take care that systems that are already quite environmentally friendly and circular and unique and working in partnership with nature, that they should not be turned into more intensive system just for the sake of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, just for one single environmental aspect, not taking into account many other aspects. And I think that is also a task that we do have, that we take care to have region-specific concepts that include an overall aspect of sustainability and not only focus on greenhouse gas emissions. And maybe also the example from Finland. I mean, we could not produce pig and poultry in that area where the farmer impressively showed how he is working in partnership with nature. And yeah, I think that are all aspects we definitely need to include into our discussion when we talk about the future of livestock.
Okay, thank you for that, Barbara. So a question or comment here on the floor.
Thank you, Delena White, International Wool Textile Organization. The last few comments are music to my ears, as you can imagine, because I do believe that we have to change how we measure greenhouse gas emissions from our animals, as I said in my presentation. And I do believe that the world is looking towards Europe on how we are going to set the parameters and that they will follow. We see that from our partners in Japan, in America. In Canada, they have just announced something very similar to the Green Claims Directive. And when we asked them, how are you going to measure it? They said, well, we're waiting to see what Europe is doing. So what's happening here at the moment is going to spark a global conversation, and I have no doubt about that. This brings us to the very interesting topic of the biopolymers, because I think at the moment we say, a third of the edible food in Europe gets wasted, so we buy from Carrefour 3 bags and then we walk out and we chuck 1 bag in the bin, kind of thing. So there's a huge opportunity to use biomass, I believe, and also in textiles. And this brings us back to the issue of the PEFCR, because if you put a biopolymer into the current PEFCR model, it measures as badly as natural fibers do, because it all comes from land and animal. So there's really a huge issue to be fixed there, or we will never move away from fossil fuel fibers. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take that as a comment, I think. And there's another question here beside you, Susanna, just there.
Just to complement somehow what has been stated, Michele Nori is still from DG AGRI. We, in the many presentation we had, there is something that is not missing, but it's somehow between the lines, is that in Europe, as it has been stated, we have 1/3 of agricultural land that is grassland. And one of the policy priorities is to maintain and to protect and to manage those grasslands. And I wouldn't see any other way to manage those grasslands if not through livestock. So livestock as a land manager is something that I think in policy debates should be brought more in the center of the picture, because we are talking about 1/3 of our agricultural territory.
Okay. Again, we'll take that as a comment, I think. Any other questions? Thomas, over here. While you're getting there, could I ask Stef a question? Stef, we had some very good examples this morning of where, you know, the livestock byproducts or co-products are the start for other industries. And that have been around for a long time. We've had the leather and the wool and the textiles. We heard about the pet foods, we heard about gelatin and collagen. Is there any kind of new innovation happening around using that part of livestock that doesn't go for food, using that and turning it into you know, more valuable materials or spawning new industries?
Yes. In my opinion, there is an opportunity there for the side streams because I was a bit surprised about hearing anaerobic digestion this morning. A decade ago, here in Brussels, I was working at a waste collection company, and we started here in Brussels for the first time in Belgium the selective collection of organic food waste. That was new then, 25 years ago. And what was also new then was anaerobic digestion. That was also new. Let's make energy, green energy out of it. And that was a technology that was developed then, but I heard it this morning. It's nice to have anaerobic digestion, turning carbon into half CO2 and half methane. These are the two problem things we have in the air. But why not? And that is our aim, of course, I heard circularity, the boundaries of circularity. In our opinion, the boundaries are keep using the carbon. So don't let it fly in the air. So don't make CO2 or methane, make something else, upcycle it. And I think in the side streams, in your business, these side streams, they still contain a lot of carbon. And they can, in my opinion, also be used, because instead of turning them into energy, I would prefer to say, okay, have a look at what could be possible with this kind of side stream, with specific composition, of course. What can be done to upcycle it, to do something which brings a higher level than only, let's say, methane or a bit of energy. So yeah, it's an open suggestion to have a look at it. I don't know if people do that here, I suppose, but yeah, the connection
but in your facility in Ghent, are there people coming to you with ideas and suggestions, or
not from let's say your sector? Not yet, no. Okay. We would like to see that more, because we think we see it happening for the example of food waste. What could be an upcycling activity of food waste? So at Biogas Europe pilot plant 2 years ago, because it's also producing food grade products, and if you make food grade stuff in an entity, you cannot bring in waste side streams. That's not compatible. So what they did, they created the grey hall, so an additional hall there. And in that grey hall, they now treat food waste. Waste streams, side streams can be treated. And in that area, they now make biosurfactants. So there is now a product on the market, EcoVer, a biosurfactant, a surface cleaner, multi-surface cleaner, made 97% out of food waste. So that is possible. In 2 years, they did it. So I would say, that's an opportunity.
Okay, so Jean-Louis up here. Sorry, Thomas first, yes.
Well, I also have a question for Stef.
Please go ahead.
Keep the line of conversation, I guess. So there's a lot of innovation in the alternative protein space, but I'm wondering, when I look to the main innovation, I see a lot being driven by US companies, and I'm wondering what is happening in the EU with respect to that. And do you think that, in the future, it will compete with animal source proteins, and what do you see in terms of the horizon there?
I think then you need to come to Pitch Perfect and boost the European Bioeconomy event. It's not the future. To give you an example, enough in Scotland, they developed the development of a mycoprotein, which can be used as a meat replacer. So let's say 5-6 years ago, they had this in the lab scale. At Biogas Europe pilot plant, they did this upscaling activity. So fermentation, not in a shake flask, but in a 150 liter, 1,500 liter, 15,000 liter fermenter. Now they also have the 75 cube fermenter, which is really almost pre-industrial scale fermenter. And then they now are on the site of Cargill, so co-hosting in Sas van Gent, which is a bit north of Ghent. And there, they installed there 2 years ago a production plant for mycoprotein, which is a meat replacer with a capacity of 10,000 tons per year as a starting point. So in 5 years, they will grow to 50,000 tons. And they use a side product from the Cargill ethanol plant, production plant, or whatever. But this 10,000 tons of meat replacer used in vegetarian chicken nuggets and fish sticks and whatever, well, they will replace meat, of course. And so it's not future. They are now in production of 10,000 tons, and in 5 years they will be at 50,000 tons. And I've got another example here in Belgium, Naplasol, also making microproteins. Maas in French also started now on a demo scale. So, of course, a lot of them are still in the pilot and demo activity, but it is not something for, let's say, coming in 10 years, except for the cultivated meat. So you start with a cell and then you grow it. This area will still take a bit of time, 5-10 years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So up here at the front first, and then down in the middle, and then at the back.
Okay.
No, you first, no? Me? No.
Okay. Now my question is about grassland and life cycle analysis. We saw this morning that clearly attributional life cycle analysis is not sufficient to evaluate livestock. But everybody, including the politician, use life cycle analysis to claim that meat is too heavy carbon. So how we can change this with a more holistic approach? I think we have a lack of knowledge about consequential analysis. What happens if livestock or part of livestock disappeared? We don't know. Barbara said this morning in Uruguay it could be desert, or in some country forest, or between the two shrub, and shrub can burn with climate change. So this is a question. And in many regions in Europe, livestock is decreasing, and it's mainly ruminant and grassland-based ruminant in extensive service. So the system who produce ecosystem services. So how we can cope with this reality? The second plan is, I understand you claim that 50,000 tons of plant-based protein. So it just...
No, it's a fungal protein. So
fungal protein.
Made by a fungi.
Fungi, okay.
Which is, yeah.
And for plant-based protein, it's much higher, I suppose.
Yeah, the activities in the plant-based area are much bigger.
What is the expectation of the level of production of this type of protein in the future?
Well, it will grow linked to the demand. If there is no demand, well, there will be no... Of course, there is also, we talk about hybrid solutions, because we have still a lot of meat eaters, so the vegetarian people are only a small part, but the flexitarians, for them, whatever. And there we have these hybrid products, so a mixture of real meat and then the plant-based thing. So what will happen with that market? It will depend on the demand. And if it's tasteful and it's not, let's say, too expensive, I think there will be a market.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So mixed protein, it's a way of progress, even for milk and plant.
Yeah, but I can also give you an idea of how to make the taste of chicken into a plant-based protein. That's difficult. But then you take a yeast, you put the DNA of a chicken into a yeast. That yeast starts to make heme protein of the chicken, and then you dose 0.5% of this heme protein into your plant-based protein, and it tastes like chicken. So also these kinds of...
We might come out of the chicken and the plant-based.
My main question is the antagonism between attributional LCA and the system we want to develop we expect to develop, which is grassland-based, more or less extensive.
Yeah. So who would like to take that? Barbara, would you like to comment on that?
I fully agree, and that is one of the reasons why we at the FAO develop these ecosystem and circular bioeconomy guidelines, because we fully believe that we need to have other aspects when we assess livestock systems. We are not there at the final multi-criteria assessment system that gives us one single perfect indicator. In addition to my work for the FAO, I have the pleasure of coordinating several AeroNet projects where we have intensive participation of researchers from INRAE, and they support us with their DEXI multi-criteria assessment system that tries to assess various impacts and not only life cycle assessment. And I think also the example that we heard this morning was a very good example. So that is what we do at the indicator and science-based level, but I think we also need to bring the message across to the public, which I think is very good here in the Animal Task Force seminar, and we also did it at the FAO Latin American conference last week, that livestock is more than greenhouse gases. Livestock is more than just producing meat and milk, and we have to bring that into the public discussion, I think.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. So Charlotte.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, okay, Carlos wishes also to comment on that.
It was just a drag to the question, which I wish I had an immediate answer to what you were saying. Of course, it's a very complex one. It will require looking at all the different methods, different typologies that we can consider. You were referring to the decrease in livestock numbers, and especially those ruminants, extensive ruminants. It's true that they are confronted with more challenges in terms of profitability and competitiveness compared also to third countries. So that's once again why we have to look again. I'm starting to hate the word holistic way, but it's true because it's not that that's the only production system that we should have in the EU. So each model has pros and cons. But what it became clear, I think to me, what became clear today, in addition to the title that was livestock is more than food, I would say that livestock is more than farmers, because we see that there are a lot of industries related which make their living out of the co-products, and even though the industries which make the living out of the co-products of the co-products. So there's a big network of interest of companies, of families behind that. And I would even take the advantage that I have the word to return a question to some of these companies, that they are so they have a business model which is based on a raw material that is declining. So it's normally any company in the world, when they present the objectives, they are always intending to grow, so grow everywhere. So how do they make it when the main raw ingredient for these companies is systematically decreasing, and there's no perspective that it will increase in the future? So all we can do with the policy is to make sure that if there's a decline, that is a structural thing, that is because some reason, but definitely is not induced or forced for any reasons, exogenous reasons. No? So I wonder if I would like to hear also from them how is your vision, or how do you see yourselves in 10, 20 years, given that you will have each year, I don't know, 1%, 2% less raw material.
Okay, an interesting perspective. So Charlotte.
Yeah, so my name is Charlotte Lauritsen from Aarhus University in Denmark. I think I have a question on behalf of several scientists, because I want to grab a little bit on this idea on using food waste for livestock feed. And I think it requires a lot of research before we can actually introduce that in terms of this challenge with biosecurity and the nutritional value and so on. But experience from what we have done so far with, insect proteins and insects for feeds, what about the legislation, and what about raising, again, the funding for actually developing and actually having the research used for actually before we can do the food waste into the livestock feed? I would like you to comment a little bit on that.
Who would you like to direct that to?
I think you had the idea.
Stef.
Oh, sorry, you came up with the idea.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to actually transfer the question to you.
Yeah, you are talking about food waste.
We have different, of course, types of food waste. The second generation comes from the food industry as such, and that is often now reused as a feed application. But you are talking about the third generation, so after consumption, I suppose. That kind of food waste, yeah. Well, what we actually see today, if I sort my food waste here in Belgium, I can put it in a bag. It is collected once per 2 weeks, and it goes to an anaerobic digestion unit, and it's turned into fertilizer, which is organic fertilizer. Circularity of carbon, good. But also for a part into this CO2 and methane. I think there are better options, as I gave the example of, let's say, a high-value biosurfactant, which has a high value. And then, in our opinion, if you want to look towards using this food waste into what then feed application, then the question will be, in our opinion, okay, this area, if it is, let's say, legally possible and sanitary possible, if safety possible, then there is the question of the economics. Turning this food waste into a biosurfactant or using it as a feed, what has the highest value? And the solution will be the one with the highest value. So we are also looking at a bit as an economical, let's say, question. You, of course, try to look at it from an investigation, what is possible and so on. So we mostly look at it from an economic side, because everything is about, we call it value change. You can have a nice solution. The innovators are in Europe, they are often, wow, I've got a solution. But if they don't have the feedstock and the guarantee of having a feedstock or having a guarantee on the product, those people that buy their products, there will nothing happen in between. So you need the whole value chain.
Okay, so Carl, thanks. Carlos, you want to comment?
I have very little to add from a policy perspective. It belongs to the competence of the Directorate General. But all I can say is that at least in that directorate in Santé, which is a competent for these matters, there's a unit which is dealing with food waste, which has the goal to reduce food waste as much as possible, or to recycle that food waste. That's a main priority for them. And at the same time, there's another unit dealing with animal feed, with a goal or with a main, let's say, remit of making sure that the feed is safe and that can be used safely for animals. So I think the matching of these two interests, I think, is possible, and maybe it's already taking place. But I'm not working on that field, so
okay,
I could check.
Okay, thank you for that. So, a question down here, and then we'll have another one over here, Susanna.
Yes.
It's on.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And we see today that livestock is more than food. It produces also high added value product or byproduct. But we see, we are the farmer union here in Wallonia, but we see that there are no fair remuneration for livestock breeders. And so I'm wondering, where should the fair remuneration comes? Does it comes from the policy through the CAP, or should it come from the industry using and purchasing our byproducts? We talk about circularity, but we see no circularity in economics. There is no link or very few economic link between farmers that produce byproduct and the industry that use that byproduct. And I'm wondering how to close the gap between the farmer and the producer and the industry on an economic perspective. So should it come from public policy, or should it come through direct payment from the industry?
Okay, good question. Who wants to answer that? Carlos, we'll turn to you as the policy man.
I would say both. The remuneration, fair or not, basically the remuneration, I would say in first place has to come from the market. So the more value you add to your product, not only you, but the ones who go after you in added value to the co-products by products, the more remuneration you will be able to get. So that's the priority, I would say, in terms of remuneration. The policy is there and it's supporting, rather than the remuneration, the income, and the CAP is supporting the income of farmers in many different ways. I referred to them a bit in my presentation. And the other element that policy gives is instruments for farmers or for producers, so that their work and the capacity to have a strong position in the chain is real, in terms of cooperation, in terms of vertical integration, in terms of avoiding unfair trading practices. These are elements which is not putting money on the table, but is giving directly or indirectly tools to farmers so that they get a better remuneration. Whether it's fair or not is then difficult to judge. So I would say these are the three key elements. First, the money from the market. We want to have a market-oriented policy, additional support, income support, and then tools to make sure that you have the possibility to have a fair negotiation, bargaining with your clients.
I suppose if I could just maybe add to that, I think it's a good question. Like if we take the case of beef, and I'm sure it's the same for pork, or that there is very good information as to what the market returns for beef, for the various at the processor level, and some information at the retail level. So farmers can see maybe, look, I'm getting a fair price, or I'm not getting a fair price in comparison to my farmer colleagues in other countries. But we have nothing like that for the 45% of the carcass that is the offals. There is no, I suppose, policy support around putting that information out there that I'm aware of. Now, maybe there is, but it's certainly not as transparent, I suppose, what the value of the fifth quarter, as we often call it, is. Mm-hmm. So for a farmer in order to get that back from the marketplace, he or she needs to maybe have some idea what the marketplace is delivering for those products for the primary processor.
You mean the retail prices of?
No, well, retail it's a long way from a hide to a leather coat, but there is no kind of information for any step in between, or at least very little information in comparison to what there is for the price of meat at the processor level and subsequently at retail level. It's much more visible, so farmers have a much better idea whether they're getting a reasonable share, and they probably feel they're not getting a reasonable share of the meat price, but they've no idea at all for the offal price whether they're getting a reasonable share. That's my perception of it. That we've done a reasonably good job of ensuring that there's some transparency around the food chain pricing, but not around the non-food parts of livestock.
I can only agree.
Okay, Stef.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something related to the question. I much believe in these cooperations of farmers that they join forces. They can then decide, okay, which kind of crop do I need? Because there is a demand coming in the industrial world of the biotech for a specific kind of crop. And then instead of having one farmer, if they then cooperate together, that this could lead to a direct connection between the industry and the farmers. Of course, the valley between, let's say, the industry and the agricultural world is still quite deep. But yeah, we, from our side, we try to approach them. I was last year here invited as a speaker on the Farmers Union Boerenbond meeting with 200 farmers in the room, And I've got an interesting question, yeah, Stef. If you predict that this economy will develop, what kind of crops would we need to grow then? And that was a really good demand, because a good question, let's say. But I didn't have the answer ready yet, because that is still something that needs to be developed.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Potential.
So a question here, and then we'll have one up at the front of the room, and we're probably going to call it a halt at that stage then. So.
Thanks, Frank. My question is for Stef, and it's pretty much about what he said, but maybe in a different way. And the question comes, I was in Denmark a couple of weeks ago as well, and we were talking about emerging biosolutions. And to me, it seemed quite obvious that there's a number from what I was seeing that are actually good for the toolkit of farmers facing into the future. So I saw a bunch of things that are emerging that will be really useful. But then my question also is, a lot of it, and I think you hinted at this, is linked to markets and value. And the companies that are creating these and trying to scale them up are just looking at the big part of the, the strong remunerative part of the chain. And so my question, I guess, would be also linked to the issue behind the decrease in livestock numbers, because unfortunately, I think one of the drivers, among others, has been farmers quitting or having to leave the sector. And we know that the trend, unfortunately, is much worse for smaller sized holdings than it is for bigger ones. So my question to you is, do we have some sort of recipe, or is there a way in which at least the public part of the funding that we put into directing the R&D to see what solutions can really start moving the needle on some of these challenges, be used to sort of direct these solutions to also create a toolbox for small and medium-sized farmers, and not just the biggest holdings that can afford to implement those? Because I think that, in the spectrum of how you can really find solutions, having a stronger toolbox for all farmers rather than some would be a really powerful way of getting there.
Okay. Stef?
Well, I don't have a direct answer to that, but I can give an example. You have the bioeconomy innovators, and as I told, they are still in the lab scale. They need to scale up. The technological risk is still high, and then they need all this equipment, and then they try to reach money, often, let's say, private investment. And what we see there is that actually these investors are quite reluctant, because inflation, higher interest rates, and so on. So they are a bit reluctant. But there we see that vouchers schemes from public area could help de-risk this pilot and demo phase, so that they can also convince the private investors to say, okay, you do a bit of de-risking, because it's still innovation, and that would help. So I would think of also this kind of thing, but then for the farmers, it could be also interesting, because they take a risk in growing a certain crop, not being sure that, and there, I don't know. I'm just thinking loud out, but we have this example in the world of scale-up voucher schemes in Europe, public regional authorities that provide vouchers to help startups to do the scale-up phase, and that helps a lot. Yeah.
Okay, and last question here to Liam.
Thank you very much. My name is Liam McHale from the Irish Farmers Association, and in relation to the attractiveness of the agriculture sector, as a farmer representative group, we focus on income. And if we take the wool sector and the sheep sector, I see Ireland as the 4th highest producer of wool, but it's a cost to farmers. It's maybe 2.5 kilos of wool per sheep, and you've got 20 cents per kilo. That's the market price at the moment. So that's 50 cents that the farmer earns. But it costs him 3.5 to 4 euros, €3.50 to 4 euros in labor to shear that sheep. And 5 years ago, I saw a stand in Ireland with wool products. And I said, this is fantastic, but you know, do we have an industry in Ireland for this? And they said, no. In Ireland, there isn't even a cleaning or a processing facility for wool. It needs to be exported to the UK. And they said, in addition to that, farmers use barbed wire, and barbed wire punctures hides. So the quality in Ireland of many of these hides isn't usable. So there's a much more holistic approach, I think, needed, starting with obviously maybe investment. So I'm wondering, I know the Commission might say, well, that's up to your national agriculture authorities to sort that out. But what can the Commission do to encourage, in terms of the circular economy, a development of this potentially waste product into an added value product? Thank you.
Yes, okay, you're going to add to that.
Can I add a comment? Yes, I fully agree. And even in Europe, because we claim that we need circularity and we need more mixed farming system, one way is to reintroduce sheep in plain where we produce only cereals. And one of the problems is economy for sure, and giving value to wool is part of the solution, I think.
Okay, so.
And wool is a nice product for wear, but also to isolate the houses in terms of climate change for the future.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant product. Carlos, another hard question for you.
Yeah, on the question of the price, okay, it's quite shocking to see such a low price. So one would have to wonder how much the market is paying for that wool. So why? Because in the end, if the return is so small, what is the demand, and what are the alternatives that in the end result in such a low price? That honestly, I cannot tell. But my instinctive reaction would be, I mean, why would anybody produce in that case below cost? If the cost is higher, why would you be selling it a product below your cost? So I guess in the end the market has to demand it and has to remunerate it to some extent. All the elements you were referring to, very specificities about using barbed wire, etc. Are very peculiar circumstances. I could think about, I was referring before about this CAP network projects with the EIP. So there's funding to research, to projects with cooperation, with this kind of bottom-up or leader approach for not only farmers but operators in rural areas to cooperate and to come with alternative solutions or to do pilot projects. I would think about these relatively narrow scope projects rather than big commission initiatives because it's a very specific topic that we were raising, Liam.
Okay, no, thanks for that. And look, I guess in relation to the wool, it's not that farmers produce sheep to try to get a value from the wool. They're producing sheep for meat. The wool used to be a valuable co-product along with it that was an additional income for the farmer, but over time it's, you know, the market is not returning anything really in terms of value for the wool. So as Liam said, it's now has become a cost in order to shear the sheep, and you have to shear them. Yeah. So that's the conundrum, I suppose, facing farmers that have what they thought was a lovely product going into the textile industry, but nobody really seems to want it anymore. I know Delena would love to comment on that, but look, we'll chat over lunchtime on it. Look, I think we have to wrap things up now. Thank you for a very interesting morning and good discussion. I'd like to just thank you for people before we finish. Obviously, like to thank all our speakers and both online and people that were here in the room, in particular our farmer representatives and those from industry. I think it's always good to hear real examples of how people are making all these concepts that we have happen on the ground. So thank you to Manuel and to Perttu for coming so far to share their stories with us, and indeed all our other speakers. We really value your contribution. I'd like to thank our audience, both the audience here and the online audience, for turning up, because you know we do this to exchange knowledge. So if nobody comes, it's a disappointment. So delighted that we had such a good attendance here. I'd also then finally want to thank my colleagues. Animal Task Force, we're a small entity. You know, we have 2 people who work part-time in the Secretariat. There's Susanna down at the end of the room with her camera, and Anna Santos over here, Susanna de Magdalene, and they do Trojan work in terms of the operation of Animal Task Force and the organisation of events like this. So a big boola boss, or big clap hands, I think, to my colleagues. And also just to acknowledge, you know, the 2 vice presidents that we've had in Animal Task Force, Giuseppe B. and Anna Granados, who also put in a huge amount of voluntary effort in the organisation of events like this and the overall work of the Animal Task Force. And we're delighted that we will have this time next year a new president in Animal Task Force, and that's Charlotte Laurenson from Aarhus University. So thank you to all my colleagues for your work. So finally, just to say, we will now have lunch, which I believe is downstairs, and hopefully we'll have a chance to continue the chats and enjoy some nice food downstairs. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.